Hey guys, Adam here with AmericanMuscle.com, and today I'm going to be installing, reviewing, and dyno testing the JLT Performance Series 2 cold air intake, which is a great choice for any 11 to 14 Mustang GT owner or 12 to 13 Boss 302 owner. Now, if you've got the S197 with the 5-liter engine in it, you might be looking to ditch the stock airbox to pick up a cold air intake that's great for engine performance, efficiency, throttle response, and of course, power and torque. Now, we're going to test all of that on the dyno. As you see, we've got our 1150 behind me strapped to the dyno. So first, we're going to establish our baseline numbers with 87 octane. We'll install the JLT Performance intake, and then we're going to run it with 93 octane and a tune. Now, I do want to point out here, this one does require a tune, so we will be installing that today. So you want to pick that up separately, but once you do, you'll unleash the full potential of this intake. So the first thing we want to talk about is the star player in the whole kit, this filter. This is going to be an oiled filter with an S&B power stack. Basically, the job of this intake filter is to filter out all of the nasty particles and elements that you don't want coming into the engine bay and the engine itself. Now, it's got some really high quality cotton gauze with specially treated oiled filter elements just to make sure that its filtration capabilities are top notch. Now, it's got that power stack top here to make sure that it is pulling in as much cold air as possible, getting it through the ABS plastic tubing. Now, that's the next step in the kit here. That ABS plastic is going to flow air very nicely through the tubing here and a lot smoother than your aluminum intakes. The cool thing about ABS plastic as well, as opposed to some of the other materials, is it doesn't retain heat as much. Now, that's actually a really good thing here with a cold air intake. Now, of course, you want cold air coming in and you don't want it to heat up as much. Some aluminum tubings out there do retain some of that engine bay heat, so it can heat up some of that air flowing through. ABS plastic doesn't do that as much. It dissipates heat a lot easier. It also includes a roto-molded heat shield or airbox shield. So basically what this is going to do is keep out some of that excess heat from reaching the filter, allowing cold air to squeeze in through the opening here, getting it through the tubing and back into your manifold. So that's going to be a huge upgrade over the factory option, which doesn't do it as well as some of the JLT options here. Now, of course, it comes with all the rubber couplers that you need, all of your band clamps that you'll need, and some of the hardware to get this installed, which I'll show you in just a bit. So you can find the JLT Performance Series 2 intake for your S197 for just about 300 bucks, maybe a little less than, which in my personal opinion isn't a bad price at all. Typically, your non-tune required intakes are a little bit less expensive than some of the tune required options. And because this is a tune required option, I'm a little surprised on the price tag compared to the quality materials you're getting here. High quality S&B power stack filter, ABS plastic tubing, roto molded heat shield, all really nice, really well fitting to your 5.0. So a little under 300 bucks gets you what you see here. You want to keep in mind that because it requires a tune, you'll have to pick up a custom tune to get this to work well and to really maximize the performance there. So that is an added cost, but for the intake itself, it's really not that bad. The first thing we're going to do is establish our baseline numbers, we'll tune it, and see what the power gains are. Taking a closer look at our stock numbers, we're looking at 344 horsepower and 303 foot-pounds of torque at the rear wheels. We then, of course, uploaded our 93 octane tune with 93 octane in the tank, and we're looking at 366 horsepower and 316 foot-pounds of torque. Now, peak gains, that's a total of 22 horsepower and 13 foot-pounds of torque with curve gains of 42 horsepower and 40 foot-pounds of torque at the rear. And that's just honestly a pretty decent gain to pull off some noticeable power. Tools needed for this install are a ratchet, extension, flathead screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, and a 10mm socket. For automatic Mustang owners, they'll need a drill, 3/8 drill bit, and a 1/2-inch drill bit. All right, guys, so before we can install our JLT cold air intake, we have to uninstall the factory airbox. Now, it's extremely simple. The whole thing can pretty much come off in one piece. A couple of things we have to disconnect here between our mass air sensor, a couple of hoses, and of course the sound delete plug. And we're gonna use a flathead screwdriver to disconnect our coupler, which is clamped on right by the throttle body. Disconnect everything. Then there's one 10mm bolt we remove for the airbox, and the whole thing will come out. First thing, we're gonna disconnect the sensor on our mass air, which has a red clip underneath. You just pull back on, the clip will slide right off. Second thing we're gonna do is disconnect a couple of hoses here. It's literally just gonna pull back on them, and they will disconnect. Next up, we're gonna use our flathead screwdriver to disconnect the coupler on our throttle body. Now, that clamp is held on pretty much right behind these hoses here. All right, from there, we'll take a 10mm socket and disconnect the bolt on the airbox. Now before we can get our JLT intake installed into the vehicle, we're gonna actually assemble it on a separate table just to make our lives a little bit easier here, since it is basically connecting pieces of a puzzle. Now the first thing we're gonna need to do is take a Phillips head screwdriver, remove the 2 screws holding on the factory MAF sensor on the stock airbox, transfer it over to our new tubing. Now the next step in the process is only going to apply to guys out there with a GT automatic transmission. Now if you have a manual transmission, you can skip the next step. Automatic transmission guys will have to drill just one simple hole into our new JLT tubing. Right above the PCV grommet, you're gonna have to drill a 1/2-inch hole into this blocked out space. That's gonna be for your automatic fitting. Now I'm gonna start off with a 1/4-inch drill bit. With our pilot hole in place, we'll upgrade to a 1/2-inch drill bit to get this finalized hole. The 1/2-inch hole drilled, you'll be given a rubber grommet to put into that hole. Take your new tubing and insert it right into that hole. Next step in our process, we're gonna grab one of our couplers. Now you'll see you have 2 different sizes. The one that comes down in size is the one that we're gonna use today for our stock throttle body. If you have a bigger throttle body, you wanna use the bigger coupler. So this will install onto the end where the hose fittings will go, and a clamp will go on top of that and tighten down once we put it onto our throttle body. But for now, coupler goes onto our tubing. After we get our coupler on, we're gonna go back to our tubing fittings here, and we're given a cap here for the sound plug. So we're gonna take our plug and cap this off. Final step in our assembly here, on the table at least, is to take our conical air filter and put it on over the other end. Now you wanna make sure you're using the clamp that the filter came with. It should have already come on the filter here. You're gonna go ahead and put the filter on the end, put that into place. You'll feel it snap in there. And then this clamp, again, flathead screwdriver, you can tighten this down. So now that we have our JLT intake assembled on the table, the first thing we want to do for dropping it in the car is to install our heat shield or airbox. Now that's going to go right down here, and just like before, it was bolted down to the side. You're going to use the factory spacer and the factory bolt straight in here. I'm going to thread it down by hand just a little bit. With the bolt threaded down, you'll see the air inlet snorkel from the factory is down here. That can actually attach to our new filter airbox. And at this point, we can drop in our new filter, attach it to the throttle body along with the tubing, and reconnect all of our fittings. You want to make sure you have a clamp here as well. You'll tighten that down. With our hoses and clamps reconnected and tightened down, the last thing we need to do is plug in our mass airflow sensor, which again, you just push in the sensor and tap down the red clip. Once that's taken care of, you're good to install your tune and get back on the road. That's gonna wrap up my review, dyno testing, and install of the JLT Performance Series 2 cold air intake for all 11 to 14 GTs and 12 to 13 Boss 302s. If you're looking to replace your stock airbox with a cold air intake that performs a little better, runs a little more efficiently, while also picking up a little bit of horsepower and torque gains, this is the way to go. If you're looking to pick it up for just about $300, you can do so right here at AmericanMuscle.com.